In a small, sun-warmed town tucked between two slow rivers, there lived a young man named Arun. People who knew him described him as gentle, a little shy, and always willing to help others, perhaps too willing. For most of his life, he worked simple jobs, helping in his uncle's grocery stall, repairing old radios for neighbors, delivering vegetables to the market at dawn. Aaron was not rich, but he never needed much. A cup of sweet tea, a clean shirt, and the feeling of being useful, these were enough for him. But one year, when the rains came late and everything became more expensive, Aaron found himself slipping quietly into debt. It started small, a loan from a cousin to fix his motorbike, another from a friend to support his mother's medicine, then another when work slowed. The amounts were little, like droplets, yet droplets become puddles, and puddles become rivers. Before Iran truly understood what was happening, the total had become a weight he felt every morning, a soft pressure in his chest, a heaviness in his steps. He was never harassed or threatened. No one shouted at him. But the guilt, that invisible rope, tightened a bit more each week. A night of quiet realization. One night, after the market closed and the town lights dimmed, Aaron sat on the old wooden bridge overlooking the river. Moonlight shimmered on the surface, rippling gently like it was breathing with him. He whispered to himself, "I want to live without this fear. I want to wake up proud again." And for the first time in a long time, he felt something shift inside him. Not a loud decision, not a sudden revelation, just a small, steady clarity. He understood one thing: no one was coming to save him, but he could save himself. The first small step. The next morning, he woke before dawn, brewed a cup of tea, and wrote down each debt on a scrap of brown paper. The list was longer than he hoped, but shorter than he feared. Instead of panicking, he breathed slowly, letting the information settle like dust in a quiet room. Then he did something simple, almost laughably small. He chose one debt, the smallest one, and decided he would clear it first. It took weeks. He walked more to save fuel. He ate simpler meals. He repaired old items for neighbors and accepted whatever they offered. And one peaceful evening, he placed a clean envelope on his cousin's table with the exact amount inside. His cousin smiled kindly, but Aaron smiled wider. It was not about the money. It was about proving to himself that progress was possible. Building the escape path. Aaron repeated this process little by little, paying off one debt at a time. It was slow but steady, like climbing a long hill step by step. During those slow months, something unexpected happened. People noticed how careful, honest, and reliable he'd become. He never broke a promise. He never complained. He worked quietly, consistently, and kindly. One woman in the neighborhood, an elderly widow named Shreemao, asked him to repair an old electric fan. When he fixed it perfectly, she insisted on paying him more than he asked. She told her sister. Her sister told her friend. Her friend told the whole street. Soon Arun was repairing rice cookers, ceiling fans, radios, phone chargers, lamps, anything the town could carry to his door. It wasn't a business yet, just a soft stream of extra work. But it was more reliable than anything he'd done before. The seed of a business. After almost a year, Aaron paid off his final debt. He expected to feel explosive joy, but instead he felt something gentler. A clean kind of peace. One morning, as he swept the small front porch of his house, he realized something. He no longer needed to fear anything. He had skills. He had community trust. He had discipline now, real discipline. the kind shaped by difficult days. So Arun made a decision as soft and simple as the sunrise. He would turn his little side work into a real repair shop. He borrowed no money. He bought no fancy equipment. He simply cleared a corner of his home, placed a wooden table beneath the window, and hung a hand-painted sign outside. Arun's tiny repair shop, honest work, gentle prices. He didn't expect much, but the town remembered who he had been during his hardest times. They remembered his reliability, his humility, his quiet perseverance, and like seeds dropped into good soil, word spread. The blossoming within 2 years, the tiny shop grew. People brought appliances from neighboring towns. Arun hired one helper, then two. He expanded into a small, proper building by the riverside, simple but full of life. And each evening he locked the shop door and walked home with the same humble steps as before. Except now, instead of fear, he carried freedom. One late evening, he returned to the old bridge where he made that first promise to himself. The river below shimmered again, like it remembered Arun leaned on the railing and smiled quietly. He was no longer escaping debt. He was building a future. He understood something precious. Great success often begins with small, invisible victories. A paid bill, a repaired fan, a decision not to give up. And in the quiet night, with crickets singing and the river whispering, Arun whispered too, "Thank you for the strength I didn't know I had." The wind carried his words away, soft as a lullaby. And so he walked home, slowly, peacefully, a man who had learned that sometimes the greatest journeys begin not with confidence, but with a quiet, trembling step in the dark. A quiet expansion. As Arun's riverside repair shop slowly grew, he never forgot the feeling of that first small victory, paying off the smallest debt. That memory stayed with him like a lantern glowing in the background of his mind, reminding him that beginnings don't need to be big. They just need to be honest. His shop became known not for speed, not for fancy technology, but for something more rare: patience, accuracy, and kindness. People trusted him. Some said just stepping inside his shop felt calming. The building was simple: a small wooden door, a gentle chime above it, a shelf lined with repaired items waiting to be collected. The steady smell of solder, warm metal, and freshly brewed tea. Arun always offered visitors a little cup of tea, no matter how busy he was. It was a habit he learned from his mother, who always said, "Tea is how you make time slow down." As the days passed and the soft rhythm of repairs continued, Arun began teaching his helpers small lessons, soldering techniques, ways to diagnose electrical issues, even how to speak gently with customers who were worried. He didn't see himself as a teacher, but teaching happened naturally, the way water shapes stone over years without ever trying. The unexpected gift. One afternoon, an elderly man named Vuthi came into the shop, carrying a heavy old radio, one from decades ago, dust-covered, wooden, and full of memories. It had belonged to his late wife, and it hadn't worked since she passed. "Can you fix this?" he asked softly. "I'll do my very best," Arun replied. For 3 evenings, Arun worked quietly on the radio. Under the dim, warm light, he replaced brittle wires, cleaned the corroded knobs, polished the wooden casing, and gently tested the circuits. He worked slowly, respectfully, as if the object itself carried emotion. When he was done, the radio turned on with a warm hum, like an old friend waking up. When Vuthi returned, he pressed the button, and the radio produced the soft crackle of music from decades past. Tears welled in the man's eyes. He held the radio as if embracing a memory. Before he left, he said something Arun would remember for years. You don't fix machines. You fix hearts. Arun smiled, shyly brushing off the compliment, but deep inside something warm settled. It wasn't just a business anymore, it was a service to the people who trusted him. Building little by little, the shop grew in reputation, but even as it expanded, Aaron refused to raise his prices too high. He kept them fair, accessible, almost too humble. People often said he charged less than he deserved, but Aaron had a philosophy. If my community carried me through my hardest days, I will carry them through theirs. He repaired fans from crowded apartments, rice cookers from busy families, radios from lonely elders, broken lamps used for children's homework, phones filled with photos people didn't want to lose. Each item meant something to someone. And slowly his business stopped being just a shop. It became a place where stories were repaired alongside machines. A second true inspired story. Within the story, a tale Aaron would later learn. One that guided him even further. One evening, when the shop was quiet and his helpers had gone home, a soft-spoken woman named Dara visited. She was in her mid-30s, polite, and carried herself with the calm of someone who had survived difficult storms. She didn't bring anything to repair. She simply asked if she could sit for a moment. Aaron nodded and poured her a cup of tea. After a long silence, she shared her story, one that would inspire him deeply. Dara's escape. Years ago, Dara had been lost in debt too, far worse than Aaron's. After her father fell ill, she borrowed money from many people, believing she could handle it. But life grew heavier. Her job paid too little. Her obligations grew too fast, and she sank deeper. She told Arun, "For 2 years, I lived in quiet fear, not because anyone threatened me, but because I felt like I was losing myself." One day, she decided to stop running. She took a notebook, wrote down every debt, and made a long plan that stretched more than 3 years. Then she worked. She cooked food for neighbors. She sold handmade soaps. She cleaned houses. She delivered flowers. She saved every coin, every reel, every moment. And like Arun, she paid off one debt at a time, starting with the smallest. After 3 years, she cleared everything. Then she started a business with the skills she learned along the way. A small handmade soap shop that now shipped items across the region. And what she said next stayed with Arun forever. Success didn't come after I became brave. Success came after I became tired of being afraid. Those words rooted themselves in Arun's heart like seeds, their shared calm. As she left, Dara looked around Arun's small repair shop and added, "This place, it feels peaceful. You built this during your storm. Remember that." Arun nodded, but her words stayed with him long after the door closed. Returning to the river, months passed, and Aaron's small business continued to thrive, not explosively, not wildly, just steadily, rhythmically, like waves on a quiet shore. One night, after finishing a long day of work, he walked back to that same wooden bridge where his journey began. The moon reflected on the river just as it had years earlier. He leaned against the railing, exhaled slowly, and felt peace. Not the quick peace of relief, but the deep peace of someone who built something solid with their own hands. The night breeze carried the faint smell of nearby kitchens making late dinners. Crickets chirped softly in the distance. The river whispered a low, calm melody, and Arun whispered into the night, "I am still learning. I am still growing, but I am no longer afraid." Part 3. Arun's shop becomes a community center. Time moved gently in Arun's riverside repair shop. What began as a tiny room with cracked walls and second-hand tools soon became something none of the townspeople had expected. It became a gathering place, a small sanctuary, a quiet center of community life, a place where people stayed. In the early mornings before the heat rose, older neighbors drifted into the shop with their cups of steaming tea. They sat on the wooden bench outside, chatting lazily about the river, the weather, the market stalls, their grandchildren. At midday, school children often wandered in with broken calculators, cracked phone screens, wobbly fans for their study desks. Arun always repaired them gently, never charging students more than a few coins, or sometimes nothing at all. In the evenings, tired workers stopped by, not just to pick up their repaired appliances, but to rest, breathe, talk, and feel understood. The shop, once merely a place to fix objects, became a place to repair spirits. The apprentices arrived. As the shop grew, Arun could no longer manage all the repairs alone. So he took on two apprentices, boys from the neighborhood who had dropped out of school for various reasons. 1. Soka, the quiet listener. Soka was 16, tall and gentle with a shy smile. He was the kind of boy who listened with his whole heart and spoke only when his thoughts were ready. He had fallen behind in school because he spent too many hours caring for his grandmother. But in Aaron's shop, he found a place where patience was a strength, not a flaw. Arun taught him how to open a device carefully, how to hold a soldering iron like it was something sacred, how to read the mood of a customer by their eyes, not their words. Soka learned quickly. He became known as the apprentice who could fix anything with delicate wiring. And slowly his confidence grew like a sunrise, quiet, steady, warm. 2. Kiri, the energetic one. Kiri was the opposite, loud, quick, reckless in a lovable way. He laughed easily, talked constantly, and often jumped into repairs too quickly, only to realize he had forgotten a step. But he had one gift: creativity. If Soka was precision, Kiri was innovation. He found new ways to reuse old parts, created custom modifications for clients, and dreamed aloud of opening a bigger workshop someday. Arun never tried to contain Kiri's energy. Instead, he shaped it gently, like guiding a wild river into useful channels. With time, Kiri became skilled, reliable, and proud of the work he could do, where life takes them years past softly. Soka's future. Soka eventually opened a small repair booth near the marketplace. It wasn't flashy, but it was always steady. People came to him not just because of his skill, but because of his calm presence. He kept a framed photo of Arun on his wall. Nothing fancy, just a quiet reminder of the man who believed in him when no one else did. Some evenings he visited Arun's riverside shop, bringing snacks and stories. To him, Arun was not just a teacher, but a second father. Kiri's future. Kiri took a different path. Using the creativity he developed under Arun's guidance, he started designing custom electronics. Portable lights for fishermen, small solar chargers for farmers, and clever little gadgets that made life easier in the countryside. One of his inventions became popular throughout the region. He hired several workers, expanded quickly, and often credited his success to the simple lessons Arun taught. Fix the person, not just the machine. Stay humble. Be useful. Kiri returned to Arun's shop every month, bringing new tools, offering help, sharing ideas. No matter how successful he became, he always bowed to Arun with the same respect he had as a teenager, a new long, comforting tale. The story of Lena. Now we drift to another true, inspired, gentle story. Lena's quiet garden of success. In a nearby village lived a woman named Lena, known for her soft voice and her deep love for plants. She had no money to start a business, no land of her own, and had spent years working as a cleaner in a roadside cafe. But she had something else, a talent for growing anything. Flowers, herbs, small trees, vegetables, anything she touched flourished. During her shifts, customers often asked how the cafe's plants stayed so healthy. The owner would always point at Lena. It's her hands. They're blessed. One day, after a particularly exhausting week, Lena decided to plant just 5 small herb pots outside her tiny rented room. She tended to them every morning, and something magical happened. People noticed. They began buying her herbs. At first 1 pot, then 2, then she needed a table, then 2 tables, then a small patch of land behind a neighbor's house. She never rushed. Her business grew like plants grow, quietly, patiently. Eventually, Lena opened a small garden shop where she sold herbs, seedlings, flowers, and calming teas she mixed herself. Her shop became the most peaceful place in the village. Her secret was simple. Plants grow slowly, so can you. Arun never tried to contain Kiri's energy. Instead, he shaped it gently, like guiding a wild river into useful channels. With time, Kiri became skilled, reliable, and proud of the work he could do. Where life takes them, years passed softly. Soka's future. Soka eventually opened a small repair booth near the marketplace. It wasn't flashy, but it was always steady. People came to him not just because of his skill, but because of his calm presence. He kept a framed photo of Arun on his wall. Nothing fancy, just a quiet reminder of the man who believed in him when no one else did. Some evenings he visited Arun's riverside shop, bringing snacks and stories. To him, Arun was not just a teacher, but a second father. Kiri's future. Kiri took a different path. Using the creativity he developed under Aaron's guidance, he started designing custom electronics, portable lights for fishermen, small solar chargers for farmers, and clever little gadgets that made life easier in the countryside. One of his inventions became popular throughout the region. He hired several workers, expanded quickly, and often credited his success to the simple lessons Aaron taught. Fix the person, not just the machine. Stay humble. Be useful. Kiri returned to Aaron's shop every month, bringing new tools, offering help, sharing ideas. No matter how successful he became, he always bowed to Aaron with the same respect he had as a teenager. A new long, comforting tale. The story of Lena. Now we drift to another true, inspired, gentle story. Lena's quiet garden of success. In a nearby village lived a woman named Lena, known for her soft voice and her deep love for plants. She had no money to start a business, no land of her own, and had spent years working as a cleaner in a roadside cafe. But she had something else, a talent for growing anything. Flowers, herbs, small trees, vegetables, anything she touched flourished. During her shifts, customers often asked how the cafe's plants stayed so healthy. The owner would always point at Lena. It's her hands. They're blessed. One day, after a particularly exhausting week, Lena decided to plant just 5 small herb pots outside her tiny rented room. She tended to them every morning, and something magical happened.